How does one boy's refusal to cut his hair lead to the creation of Iceland, the country, not the supermarket? It's the 9th century AD and Harald Halfdanson, aged 10, has inherited his father's kingdom. It's not the best. On a map of Europe, you may need to zoom in a bit to spot it. Even on a map of Norway, it's not big. You see that little red dot? That's not his kingdom. I couldn't find a map of his kingdom. Rather, that's roughly the area within which all the various bits of his kingdom sat. And this is 9th century Norway. It's not exactly densely populated now, so back then his royal subjects must have consisted of himself, his retinue, a cow, 3 chickens and a goat. It's like me standing in my back garden and loudly declaring to the world, "Behold the extent of my realm." But the king must have a queen, so Harald propositions the Princess Gyda. She replies that she would not throw herself away, even to take a king for her husband, who had no greater kingdom to rule over than a few districts. "Come back when you're king of all Norway," she adds. Now, I don't know if she meant this as a challenge or if she was kind of saying, "Sure, I'll marry you on the 12th of never," but in any case, she has just given Harald a very dangerous notion. He vows 2 things. First, he will be king of all Norway, and second, he won't cut or even comb his hair until he is. I sympathise to some degree. I was once an annoying teenager who refused to cut his hair. I didn't want to be a king though, I wanted to be a god of heavy metal. And now I'm short on both hair and record deals, so you can see how that turned out. Anyway, there's an old expression about how the only certainties in life are death and taxes. Well, Harald is bringing plenty of both to Norway. With his maternal uncle at his side, he advances north and orders that all the men be killed and everything wide around be delivered to the flames. I sure hope Princess Gyda is hot for war crimes. And if that doesn't tempt her, how about his increasingly wild hairdo? His mop is like some sort of real-life portrait of Dorian Gray, getting grimmer and grimmer the more he conquers. They start calling him Shockhead and Lufa, meaning rough, matted hair. Think of all the dried blood. Very sexy. And once he's crushed a realm militarily, he moves to squash it financially. He imposes heavy taxation and gets the local earls to collect it, with the understanding that they can take a fat slice of the pie so long as they maintain a fighting force. High taxes in Norway? Well, I never! The result, according to one account, is that each of his earls had greater power and income than kings had before, and that tempts yet more of the nobility to rally behind him. More kingdoms fall, some in battle, some in submission, more grotesque slaughter described in the most heroic terms. Every now and then a coalition of local lords or provincial kings will band together against him, but time and time again he bests them, until an alliance arises to really challenge him. And I'll tell you all about it after a little refreshment. Now, today's tipple is Highland Park's 12-year-old. Based in Orkney, Highland Park is the northernmost Scotch whisky distillery, and they make a big deal out of the island's Viking heritage, so they have these quite ornate Norse bottle designs which are very lovely. Cheers! Yeah, wonderful. A little bit of zest, but mellow, with just a little smokiness. Now, if you'd like to grab a bottle, the link is down in the description. Affiliate links earn a small commission to support the channel at no extra cost to yourself. So, who can stand up to Harald? 4 kingdoms now unite against him. Hordaland, Rogaland, Agder and Telemark, led by Kjotve the Rich of Agder. Awkwardly, Hordaland is the kingdom of Princess Gyda. Wow, she really doesn't want to marry him. This coalition has assembled ships and weapons and a great body of men. A contemporary account written by Harald's court poet describes how the alliance has brought foreign mercenaries too, and many a mailed spearman stout from the west countries round about, English and Scotch, a foreign host, and swordsmen from the far French coast. The two sides clash at Hafrsfjord in southern Norway, and once again Harald and his army unleash another bloodbath. Sorry if you were expecting an interesting second act where our protagonist finally meets his match, but these ancient writers have no sense of dramatic flair. Now, the accounts of Harald's life are muddled and varied, and most are written long after his death. The one this video is based on, the Heimskringla, offers the fullest telling of the tale, though it's not the oldest or most reliable. But Hafrsfjord appears time and time again in multiple accounts, including one from Harald's lifetime. And among the various descriptions of this battle, intriguingly, is one from Iceland. Grettir's saga tells the tale of an Icelandic hero, Grettir the Strong, whose great-grandfather, Onunda, a Norwegian, is said to have fought at Hafrsfjord. According to the story, Onunda is aboard a ship fighting against Harald's forces when his leg is crushed by a rival vessel. After the battle is lost, he flees the country and eventually arrives in Iceland. He's now known as Onundur Threefoot, by the way, because they replaced his lost leg with a wooden stump. The last detail isn't really relevant. I just love how literal Norse names can be. I could be Michael Crap Videos, we could have Donald Fake Hair or Charles Sausage Fingers. It's like a naming system designed to highlight your insecurities. Anyway, the important part is Onundur goes to Iceland, and that features in the Heimskringla too. It is said a great multitude fled out of the country, and the out countries of Iceland and the Faroe Islands were discovered and peopled. Others went to the various islands of Scotland, it says. Hilariously, it also says that many of those that fled King Harold went on Viking cruises, which to many of us in the year of our Lord 2026 is a company offering wealthy pensioners riverboat tours down the Danube. You can imagine our Nordic refugees relaxing on the pool deck, enjoying some fine dining, and listening half asleep while a jazz band plays the old-timey favourites. Which, to be fair, does sound like a lot more fun than being massacred by Harold's warriors. In any case, various accounts, including from Iceland, make the link between people fleeing Norway and arriving in this new frozen land. For example, the Floamana saga, an ancient Icelandic text, describes how a Norwegian noble resists the tyranny of Harald and is killed. Faced with death, his son Horstein, and I quote, fled away to Iceland before this hostility, as many powerful men did at that time, fleeing their ancestral lands because of the oppression of King Harold. Imagine being such a tool that the support group for your victims is a whole goddamned country. But the Icelanders get some measure of revenge too if the tales are true. The Heimskringla tells us that raiders come from the west every summer and raid the middle part of Norway. So Harold puts to sea and goes after them. He sails to the Shetland Islands, the Orkneys, the Hebrides and the Scottish mainland, killing everyone like the good old days. By the time he gets to the Isle of Man, everybody has already fled. And to quote the saga, the island was left entirely bare of both people and goods. But he never quite makes it to Iceland. It's such a long voyage across the ocean, it could take weeks, and the Wi-Fi on board is pants. What if he misses the latest instalment of our weekly pub quiz? A weekly pub quiz, you say? Tell me more! But of course, once a week you'll get 10 questions in your inbox. Pick your username, submit your answers, and see if you can make the leaderboard. It's open to everybody on our mailing list, Dispatches, where you'll also find more trivia, book reviews, guest columns, and more. A sign-up link is down in the description. And before we get back to it, please consider subscribing to the channel, dropping a like on this video, and commenting to say, what's your self-deprecating Viking name? So, what's Harold rushing home to? A surprisingly busy private life. Remember that princess who said she'd only marry Harold once he was king of all Norway? Obviously she's already had reason enough to regret saying that. Her father fell against Harold at Hafrsfjord and her kingdom has been absorbed into his. But at least she won't have to marry him, what with him already having married someone else. Maybe he's forgotten about her. Except he hasn't. The saga tells us he remembered what that proud girl had said to him, so he sent men to her and had her brought to him and took her to his bed. History doesn't say whether she had any say in this, but it's not the most consensual language, is it? She bears him 5 children but gets left on the scrap heap along with 8 other wives when Harold finally finds his soulmate, his 10th bride, Ragnhild the Mighty. Ah, how romantic. So he unified Norway and got the girl. Several girls, in fact. What does that leave? Ah, yes, the scraggy, blood-soaked mop on his head. In a vaguely homoerotic scene, Harold is given a bath by his ally Ragnvald, and his hair, uncut and unbrushed for 10 years, is at long last trimmed. No longer is he Harold Shockhead or Harold with the rough matted hair. Now he receives the name history will remember him by. He is Harald Fairhair, or Harald Fairhair. Fair meaning nice, not blonde. To avoid confusion, we sometimes call him Harald Finehair. Fine meaning nice, not thin, or simply okay. In fact, some have even suggested we call him Harold Handsome Hair, just so we're absolutely clear that his hair is fantastic. But this is a name so absolutely lacking in Viking street cred that it's never really caught on. In any case, the saga is clear. It says all who saw him agreed that there was the greatest truth in the surname, for he had the most beautiful and abundant head of hair. As for Iceland, they move away from the Viking lifestyle, shifting from raiding to farming and establishing an agrarian, community-minded society. So that's the story. Is it true? Maybe. Academics disagree about whether Harold ever even existed, and some scientists argue that the founder of Iceland was Scots and Irish rather than Scandinavian. Maybe all those sagas are just cannibalizing one another, taking common threads and adding new details until we have a surprisingly full story. But whatever way you want to slice it, that's the foundation story of 2 nations. Harold the Great Unifier and Harold the Monstrous Tyrant. But I will say this, if someone proposes marriage and you don't fancy it, just say no. And for God's sake, don't make it conditional upon them becoming King of Norway. Skål!